Welcome back to Yin and Yang, the podcast. This is going to be episode 27, and it's going to be just Yin and Yang today. Mr. Yin, how are you?
Good, good. How are you doing? You've been gone for past week.
I have been offline for the past week. Yes, we will. We're going to get into that. I was at the... I was in northern Napa Valley area that was not affected by the fire, fortunately. So, and I was at doing the Hoffman process. Yeah, I was doing that, which is a sort of meditation, psychotherapy kind of retreat. So, and I asked them actually, like, if I were to actually podcast about them, like, is there a guideline? Like, well, I guess the guideline is basically any personal information from any participants, of course, is, totally out. And that's totally, I totally respect that. As far as the techniques that they use there, yeah, it's they're all stuff that has been done or documented in other places of therapy, psychology, but the way they synthesize it is, I guess, their own. But yeah, sorry. Before I get into that, yeah, I just I did that. But like, how are things with you and everything too?
I mean, just dealing with kids for the most part.
Right.
I did run into some friends recently who I didn't know, or I just take that back. They're my friends, but one of my friends, I didn't know he actually listened to one of our podcasts.
No way.
Yeah, it was because of the posting on Facebook. So his really good friend, said, "Hey, did you know that Dan is doing a podcast?" And so they listened to it, and he goes, "Yeah, that is Dan."
Oh, cool.
I was like, "Oh, interesting."
So your friends are listening. That's
well, kind of. They only listened to one episode.
The one episode where I talked my own worst enemy. My friends,
my friend said it was like episode 8. It was you were just about to go on a date with the girl with yellow fever.
Oh gosh, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, yeah. My friends, they'll listen to some, and two of my friends messaged me right after I posted my own worst enemy, and they were like, "Dude, James, I totally feel you." And that was actually pretty cool, actually. I've never that's a cool feeling, like your friends or people you respect come up and appreciate what you've done. So that's pretty dope. Okay, yeah. So yeah, I just have some basic notes. I mean, yeah. So I did the Hoffman process that we can talk about, and then I saw Hamilton.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I finally saw Hamilton. I've been reading the 4 Hour Work Week. I just finished that, and I'm in the process of donating my car. So we've got a good amount ground to cover. But that's my basic outline for today.
Okay.
I mean, was there anything you wanted to cover?
Nothing off the top of my head, but other than some of the things that you just mentioned, I'm primarily curious about the Hoffman process.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah.
Yeah, because I used to work at a large corporation, and everyone there was encouraged to go to a specific self-help place, almost like your career would stall out if you didn't go. And I never went, and I didn't last there too long.
Oh, wow.
I lasted there for a little bit over a year, and it was a weekend course for like 3 days for $1,600, and it came out of your pocket, even though you're strongly encouraged to go, you had to pay for it.
It's like $1,600, right, or something.
Yeah, for 3 days. And I hear that more than half the people in each session is made up of people from this company. So
Was it Hoffman related, or it was just like some other like kind of like Landmark or whatever those other companies or
yeah,
something?
yeah. I did hear that they eventually switched over to Landmark at some point after, well, way after I left.
Yeah.
The chairman of the company wanted to go to, he's, I don't know what his deal is, but why he insisted on going to these places and insists like everyone go. So he went from the very first one, which was a very Asian oriented one,
Okay.
and then he switched over to Landmark. I think there was like one more in between. So
Cool.
very interesting.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. But you've never been to like a self-help thing.
No, I was like $1,600 3 days.
Yeah.
It seems like
Pretty
it sounded a
steep.
lot. Everyone who went um, said it was kind of very like a brainwash kind of thing.
Yeah, so I prior to like I'm a little anxious to talk about it because I don't want to reveal too much. So
You don't
about
have to reveal too much. I mean, just overall impression. Was it helpful?
yeah, it was. And here's what I can reveal. So basically, I asked them for guidelines, and they said, yeah, there is no strict guideline. Just protect people's on anonymity, and also, for anyone who is interested or is planning to do the Hoffman process, I would say for any listener right now who's for sure going to go or is planning to do it in the near future or is interested in doing it, I'm going to give you a spoiler alert now because I will pretty much share, I'll share the basic tenets and principles that they went through and some of the exercises that they did there because here's a real talk. Hoffman process costs $46,000+ for a week, right? And that's kind of ridiculous for someone such as me or many of the working class. I mean, would you say so, or
Yeah,
or is that normal?
Mm, no, I actually don't know. The classes that they encouraged me to go to at that company,
Yeah.
I was speaking to the chairman. He wanted me to go to one in Thailand
What?
and it was like a week long, and it came with room and board, kind of like the Hoffman, but it was in Thailand, and it was like $4,000, and then I would also have to shell out the $1,000 plus airfare.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, about $4,000, and this is like 12 years ago.
Oh, geez. So that's with inflation. That's quite a bit of coin. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's about right. 4,600.
Yeah, 40 and it's about right for I guess here's the way I think about it. If you think of it as kind of like a couple hundreds of hours of therapy crammed into like a week or something, it could be cost effective, I guess. There are scholarships for it that you can look up online, and I was lucky to get sponsored for the process. I'm not going to say about, I'm not going to get too detailed who that was, but I was sponsored, and from someone who appreciated some of my previous work, my artistic work. So, and real talk, Dan, like I seen that price tag, I probably would never go unless I was sponsored, right? Because I think to myself, wait, with that money, I could invest maybe I could buy a couple stocks in Apple or Google,
Yeah.
and then so it's my sponsor. I am so appreciated to that person that and I remember saying because towards the end of the process, you're asked. So basically, for the whole process, you're not allowed to talk about your job and politics and religion, like basically divisive things. But the interesting thing is you're not supposed to talk about your job. It's not allowed. which I found interesting. So at the end, we talk about what we do, and also who brought us here, or or whoever. It could have been a spouse, and I mentioned my sponsor, and what I said was like, for all his faults and for all my faults, I deeply, deeply appreciate what he's done for me,
Yeah.
and the amount of care and and thoughtfulness that he's provided. So going back to the process, yeah, so it's intensive, like self help stuff. A lot of the people there were paying out of their pocket. Some of them were sponsored. Some of them got. I don't know if anyone got scholarships, but for the most part, majority were rich white people. Yeah, and there were a few non-white people as well and there were some deviation to that norm.
Yeah.
I was the only let's just say there were other ethnicities, but I was the only East Asian guy. I guess I can say that. That's fine. Yeah.
Right.
And what I will say is, okay, it's a 4-step process, and you can look this up online. This is all available for the most part. It's a 4-step process that they span out with different exercises over the course of Saturday through Friday. So like 7 days, 6 days.
Yeah.
And it's awareness is step 1. Step 2 is expression. Step 3 is compassion and forgiveness. Step 4 is new behavior. So what does that all mean? What that means is basically awareness is there's extensive homework you have to do prior to the process. And then so again, I'm just gonna have a disclaimer again. If you plan to do the process, it might be good. This is kind of like a trailer. I'll give you the trailer version. But for me, I don't like to read trailers. So if you want to be surprised and delighted, you can stop listening now. But I'll give you the trailer version. Try to keep some of the excitement if it does inspire you to go or not. So the awareness part is like you do a lot of homework where you look at patterns of behavior. And certain patterns, I'll give you some examples. Neediness is one of mine. Paranoia, not good enough, judgmental, critical, self-critical, and critical of others. So these are patterns, right, that you kind of mark down. So there's a list of patterns, and I checked a lot because basically the instructions were check ones that you feel that relate to you. And I checked them. And then what's interesting is, and this is very Hoffman, is check the parent or surrogate parent. Surrogate parent could be like a stepfather, stepmother, grandparent, grandfather, grandmother that raised you, and that you attribute this pattern to. And it could be more than one. So, sure, I checked, let's say, I checked one pattern, and then I'll check I related it either to my father or mother. And so that's the awareness part. That's part of the homework. And then from there, you do more homework when you're on site. And it's kind of like a cool, like, a little rustic, area that's it's still on a public access road, which is good, because then it's not as much as a cult, right? Because if it was like it's kind of secluded, but it's not like freaking fenced off or there's walls or something, right? There's actually so there's people that sometimes jog through, but for the most part, very in the woods, and very nice, beautiful area, and so we go to class, and classes are intense. They're like and you have to go to meals, right? So because they want you present for meals. And I was kind of like, what? Like, what's up with all these rules? But I just went with it, and yeah. So for some of the for one of the classwork, what you did was, okay, take all these patterns that you have and pick up the top ones for your parents and your surrogate parents. Okay, so and then kind of like, and then going through the list and really like thinking and making sure you check all the ones that relate to your parent. So that's the awareness part. And there's some other, and then we do a little bit. So like there's, where there's a group session and there's a smaller group session. And let me see, can I say the group size? It's you can think of like a regular classroom size. Yeah. That's all I'll say. Right. And then from the regular classroom size, there's a smaller classroom. There's a smaller groups that you go to and chat. So there is that group therapy aspect where you talk about kind of the pain that you're going through and you share with the group. And that was good. And people from all walks of life, but, kind of skewed towards the I guess the wealthier side, sure, but because of the nature of the fee and whatnot. But there were other people who were probably closer to my range and whatnot. I may or may not edit that out. Anyways, what was I gonna say? Okay. Awareness of the patterns and the parent you got it from. And a lot of the stuff they talk about is negative love patterns, and they teaching you all these terminology. So some terminology is like negative love, which is like, do you get like you learn these certain patterns from your parents in an effort to receive love, right? But they're actually patterns that kind of hurt you. So like maybe neediness that comes out of maybe abandonment issues. And for the most part, the Hoffman process is about how much your parents fucked you up. Nice. It's basically all these patterns, all these major things that are messing up your life, you can attribute and trace back either to a surrogate parent or your parents or all of them, right? And mine was my parents and my grandpa and grandma on my dad's side. They're the ones who mainly raised me. And yeah, so it was kind of fun tracing those back. And then there's the expression part. Okay, expression part, you can find this. There's a GQ article that kind of talks about this. So, spoiler, you basically use a lot of they tell you not to do any cardio when you're on site. I'm like, what? Why not? Why can't I do like some Tai Chi? They're like, just refrain from it for the week. So we did that. So I didn't do any Tai Chi or anything for a week. But they put you through the ropes in another way, in that you express kind of whatever feeling you have for how much, for all these things that you inherited from your parents. Okay. So there's let's just say there's wiffle ball bats and there's pillows involved. Okay.
Okay.
And let's just say that, and there's a lot of that. Okay. And people are crying, people are it's pretty intense. Like, you're getting all this energy, this negative energy out or whatever. And it was kind of hard for me to get into, right? And at first, but yeah, it was I was just like fuck it, I'll just think of, one guy said like, hey, I just thought of it as a workout, and I was like, okay, maybe I'll just do that. And then I started getting more into like the it's like where I usually don't get. I live with roommates. I live in the city. It's hard to find a safe space to, like, I don't know, scream or yell if I wanted to. I generally don't want to most of the time, but I was like, hey, why don't I try that? I normally don't have a space to do that, so I'll try it. And it's kind of fun, it's kind of like you get it out. And I didn't really have the reaction where I was like breaking down and crying or anything like that, but I did have kind of a reaction of, well, yeah, it's just, I feel like I'm getting some whatever, like, it's not very intellectual. It's more just like visceral, just getting out all your whatever aggression, stuff like that out. And it's kind of scary, but like the way I thought of it was that I'm not really like beating my mom or dad, you know. I'm hitting, or I'm visualizing certain patterns that I'm these negative ideas, you know, that I'm trying to hit away or bat, you know, but like smack away. So like that was kind of like the way I thought of it.
Okay.
Yeah. There's the awareness of patterns that you inherit from your parents, whatever, neediness, whatever. There's the expression where you kind of use a lot of physical energy and voice to express it out and get it out. And there's different techniques that they show you there. And that's like kind of like the first couple of days is expression and awareness of getting all this junk out, right?
Yeah.
And using your body and whatnot, and it's all like fairly safe, and nothing that is too unheard of. Like I've had, I've played around with these ideas of like, yeah, it might be good to like, for example, maybe scream or something, or remember I told you I went boxing and I was like felt like I was hitting myself,
Yeah.
like because I was so like. Because I was my own worst enemy, and basically they use those kinds of principles, okay, times 10 or whatever, and then from there expression is okay. So basically we spend all this time hating our parents or surrogate parents, right? And how they messed us up. And there's also there's a writing aspect as well. You're writing a letter basically outlining how you just like get it all out, whatever resentments you had towards your parents or your grandparents or whoever raised you, just get it all out onto paper, okay? And I thought that was that was cool. Just kind of just let it all out. And I was the only one where I wrote to my grandparents. I'm like, I'm not gonna write in English, So so and what was cool is like they said, hey, if you write in a different language, write in that language. And I was like, shit, I'll. The thing is, I don't have my phone or my laptop. Like you're not supposed to use it, right? So I just like fucking just wrote it the best I could, and I used like romanization for the stuff I didn't understand, and that was interesting because it first of all it was a good language training,
Right.
but and then from there, no, I felt more connected. Like, oh crap, that's how I would probably say it to them in real life. My grandparents, if they were still with us, right?
Yeah.
So you get it all out, you express it all out, and then compassion and forgiveness is where you. What are some of the good things you learned from your family? Okay, right? It's not all fucked up, right? Like who you are, your integrity, your sense of values. Like, of course, there's all this beautiful stuff that you get from your parents, right? So the scary thing about me before I went to Hoffman was like, oh god, because there was a video that online that used like, and I did some research on like these cult websites about Hoffman, and and for the most part, overwhelmingly positive. But there's like these one or two ones saying, "Oh, my husband or wife left me after they went to the process," or one guy said like, "Oh, I felt uncentered afterwards." So these were things. These were the apprehensions I had coming into it, right?
Yeah.
But I called another friend who was a graduate as well of the process, and I asked her, "So what's up?" And it's so funny. It's like she said, "Okay, it's kind of like rich white people shit." But there's some good stuff, and the compassion part is when I finally found like, okay, I'm glad that they have this component, because like if it was all like just hate towards the parents, I'd be like, especially for Asian people, that's like really no, right? Like you're supposed to respect your ancestors and stuff like that. So good, there's a compassion and forgiveness part, and that part you go back into, there's a writing component of like, thank you for this, thank you for that. And there's a component of like, kind of just thinking of your parents as like kids, right? And then how did they learn from their parents? And for me, there's this image of my dad that I saw in this old photo, right? That I kept thinking of when I was going through this step of the process. And there's this picture of my dad, and he has kind of like this, it's this really innocent look. I don't know if you ever seen pictures of your parents as kids, but it's kind of alarming. Like I can tell it's my dad, but like, dang, this could be like one of these kids I've taught, one of my, in the past or something like that, is who seems like he needs love or something like that. And there's that component. And yeah, I thought about the stories my father told me. And writing the letters, I noticed that writing to my mom was much harder because me and my mom talk a lot more than me and my father and I.
Yeah.
But I know so much less about my mom's history, actually. I don't know. Like, do you know your family history pretty well, or?
No, I know some of it. They're very tight-lipped about their childhood and their past.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of how my mom shared a little bit of me. My dad's a little bit more loquacious about it. But so they also told us like just to make stuff up. That like the point is to find empathy, right? And yeah,
Yeah.
so we wrote, and I wrote, and there's some level of empathy there. And I remember like, yeah, some people just like, people have different reactions, and the good thing is that there's no right reaction. Some people can withdraw. Some people could be like, you know, some people could laugh or whatever. But whenever like you're doing any of these exercises, you know, they don't force you to like, oh, you have to be crying. But
Right.
some people naturally did that, and I was kind of surprised that. And for me, I'll get to it, but there's the point. I didn't really kind of like, break down until maybe a little bit towards the end, or yeah. Um, so there's compassion, forgiveness. Um, there's different exercises where you stare in people's eyes, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of like, and it's, I've done some of those exercises before, but it's interesting because there's different people in the group, and I found this is so interesting. Like, and you see in your regular life, there's some people in your life that just trigger you, right? And I think no matter what group or social dynamic, there's certain people that like, I don't know if I really want to look in your eye, or it might be dangerous if I look into your eyes for too long. I might start feeling things. And there's the guideline is like you're not supposed to hit on anyone there.
Okay.
And you know what? That was so freeing for me because that's one of my patterns. One of my patterns is being very needy and trying to hit on every hot girl I see, right?
Yeah.
But taking that out of the equation was just very freeing for me because I could just focus on the work and myself, right?
Right.
So I did, and then there was one person, that I looked at, and it was just kind of alarming because this person had let's just say the person had very nice eyes, right? And I started feeling things, right? But then I started start asking like, okay, what am I projecting onto this person, right? What all we're doing is just looking into each other's eyes, right?
Yeah.
And one thing they talk about is something called transference, or what we talk in layman terms is like projection, right? Where there's a certain exercise where you speak to each other, and you mention a certain experience you had with that person, and there's a teacher present, so it's all safe and it's in the fairly loving environment, right? And but it's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever done, it's like very, very confrontational, super confrontational. But the lesson from it is that I felt these things because you reminded me of so and so, right?
Yeah.
And I reacted like so and so. I reacted like a certain parent. And then you mentioned that if you are still in it, or are you free of that? And that was that's a kind of a cool exercise. and like, so they're separate, right? So that the looking the eyes thing, but then through all these exercises, certain exercises can trigger something, and then the next exercise is when you mention that, oh, during that exercise or during that interaction, I had this kind of reaction to you, and that stuff is I don't know. That's something I definitely want to. Okay, they do tell you don't use this in don't start telling your wife, hey, I had a negative reaction to you because you did this and that reminded me of my mom. Like, that's dangerous stuff, right?
Right.
But the awareness of that, the awareness of, oh, this is something I learned from my dad, you know? Like, one of the things was reacting to, you know, fuck, I'll just say, like, an attractive person that was at the retreat, right? I react like they made a certain movement away from me, okay, and I reacted in a way that was like hurt, like, oh. But the thing was, like, I asked that person later about it, and they said I have no memory of that, right? And it was so funny, and we just kind of laughed about it because it's not about that person, you know. It's about me, right? And I realized so much of all these dates I've been on, all these freaking things where, like, the person didn't text me back, and what am I doing? And we've already, we've already talked about this. I'm giving up my power to this person. I'm saying they are responsible for my happiness, which is bullshit, right? Or they're responsible for making me feel like, oh, I really wish you didn't move your, like, I really wish you didn't walk away from me or something, like, when I was
Right.
But the thing is that, am I really seeing that person or not? Or am I projecting? So okay, one thing I learned, and I mentioned this in the loved ones episode, is my grandpa, right? He's like one of the first people to give me unconditional love, okay? As a child, and that kind of built maybe certain resentment between my father and I. Well, I didn't know. I'm just a baby. I'm a kid. But, I recorded something right after the process when I got back to the Bay Area, and I might post it on our site or not, but it was basically a realization I had that, my grandpa really loved me, but my father was worried that he was spoiling me. So one time I was sleeping, in the bed, in the grandparents' room, and then my dad pulled me out, and he put me back in my room, right? And I'm like 5 or something.
Yeah.
And I remember this memory as I was writing one of these letters, and I was just like, oh shit, maybe that was traumatic. And it was traumatic. I'm not gonna lie, it was traumatic at the time. I'm remembering it now, like 25 plus years later, right?
Yeah.
And so what's my point is that because of that, I think I seek out people, females. I seek out females like my grandpa, which is weird, right? It's not gender restricted. It's actually like, so people like my grandpa are a little bit. So my grandpa kind of a stylish guy, like to wear suits, kind of stoic, but has a really warm side that he rarely he only shares to select people, right? My dad used to call him the samurai, right? My grandpa was a samurai, very loyal, very, very stoic and stuff. I noticed that, like, my ex-girlfriend, like, was kind of like stylish and a little bit stoic, and in some ways, like, this is not, like, she had like similar like feature, like kind of like the slim build, and my grandpa was a handsome guy, right? So I kind of like handsome women.
Okay.
Which is, whatever. I mean, pretty's cool. Like, I don't really like girly women, but like I like kind of like, yeah. And I was just like, oh, maybe that's why. And so that person I had a negative reaction to, I kind of connected some of these traits, right? And
Yeah.
it's so funny. It has nothing to do with her.
Right.
I mean, have you ever had something similar like this, or yeah?
Uh, yeah. I mean, I will say that when I go out to restaurants, I mean, everyone goes out to restaurants, right? But uh, usually, I feel more attracted to the waitresses.
Oh,
Yeah, because my mom was a waitress, and I was like, oh, they're very caring. They're very easy to. Usually, the good ones are really easy to talk to and all that stuff. I was like, oh, but then I realized why that is.
oh, okay.
Because my mom was they're always there when I was younger, growing up.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's sort of the same feeling that you have towards your grandfather. My
yeah.
mom, I, I mean, she has her flaws. Don't get me wrong, and it's one of those things that people have pointed out to me. Hey, you kind of like do like it's a black and white thing with you. It's like you view your dad one way and you view your mom another way,
Yeah.
and you're more accepting of your mom's flaws than your dad's flaws. And they go, why is that? And I was like, well, she always had my back when I needed her
Ah,
growing up. So I recognize all her flaws, but she's always had my best interest at heart. And not to say my dad didn't have that, but I never felt that way.
the, one thing they did every morning was they asked you how you feel,
Yeah,
and at the process, and it's coming growing up in an Asian family, you're taught for the most part you're taught like feelings are not important. Like how you felt or how you felt for you. It's basically for me. I was like, oh, are you hungry? Like here's the feelings you feel. Are you hungry? Then you should eat. Are you tired? You should take a nap. Like all the biological things, right? And
yeah,
then you know are you getting good grades, are you like the things about are you happy, are you sad, are you like those. In some parts I understand where my parents are coming from, like because basically you still gotta work when you're sad, you still need to put food on the table, you still need to survive. I understand that
yeah,
aspect, but
yeah,
one thing that I took away is that, well, actually you could be more productive or whatever that means, or be more happy or understand if you know how you feel and kind of work with that feeling, um, or work with that and see how you can channel that energy into something. So they would ask us each morning, and no judging, which what I liked a lot. There was no judging. They would just ask and be curious. Oh,
yeah,
so one thing for me was like anxiety. Like I had a lot of anxiety coming in. I didn't want to go to a freaking cult. I didn't want to go to like some brainwashing seminar, right? So I
yeah,
mentioned like I was apprehensive or anxious, and they would just ask why, and they're like, okay, cool, that's how you feel, and then they'd ask you like where did you might where might you get that from, and my mom has a lot of anxiety and worry, right? And this is like it's not even therapy. It's like so obvious to my siblings and I, right? And
yeah,
we all know we get it from our mom, and we don't need a psychologist to tell us that. But what was good is that, okay, where's the false construct? Where is it, like where is their real worry? What signs? What rational red flags am I seeing, or which ones am I creating for myself? You see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
okay, sure, it's kind of weird that we're in the secluded area. It's kind of some of the visualizations we have to do are kind of weird and stuff, but for the most part, like I'm not, I don't have to drink any cool, I'm not drinking any like secret sauce or something they're making us, like, and the food was pretty decent, but it's all like white food though. So I was the first thing I did, like the Tex-Mex shit. So which is fine, like the food was good, right? But I am not, we did not grow up eating. I did not grow up eating.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. So first thing we did, and it's funny, my one of my Asian homies that was on in the group, we just like we just chatted about it, and yeah. Anyways, so we're like, oh man, right after we get out of this retreat, we're gonna eat, we're gonna eat, get some ramen. We're gonna, but anyways, not bagging on the tree. The food was good. So what was I saying? So okay, so yeah, our feelings. So from compassion and forgiveness, we have to understand that our feelings are also important too. That it's information that's telling us how we are, and that we should forgive ourselves for feeling certain things. Maybe I do feel depressed sometimes. That's okay. What does that mean? That means I need to look at what's causing that and how I can use that or make some changes, right? And there's a part about the dark side. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap it up real quick. Step 4 was new behavior. I'm gonna get to that step, but so it's so easy for me to think of a dark side. Okay, so they they have this idea. So there's the 4 steps to new transformation, awareness, the 4 steps I mentioned: awareness, expression, compassion, forgiveness, and new behavior. Then there's also the 4 aspects of being that they have. They call it the quadrinity, right? And this is all stuff you can find online. They call it the body, the physical body, the intellect, which is like the rational thinking mind, and then they have the emotional self, which is like kind of like the childlike, playful, emotional side. And then there's something called the spirit. Okay. So this is something I think you and I would have the most, I know for me, I had the most trouble understanding, because I do not have a religious background. I don't plan to have a religious background anytime soon. This idea of spirit, soul, it's kind of like woo-woo, ha-ha stuff, right?
Yeah.
Now, but when they said, okay, we want you to, we want you to think of your dark side, and what are the negative thought patterns and things that that side is telling you. And I don't know. For me, I was like, wow, I can actually have a much more concrete idea of this dark side than some sort of spirit side, right? And I asked one of my teachers about it, and she had a really interesting response. It's kind of like the amygdala, right? The reptile brain. Because I think they kind of know that I'm like the science guy, but at the same time, I think that's something that that she was curious about too. Is like basically we're all trained to see the negative in things. We're trained to see the red flags in everything. Why? Because of survival, right? Oh, yeah. Is the water right? The flood outside, is it rising, or is it or it's like, is there a fire? What's that smoke? So. The thing is that we translate that into our everyday lives, and so now we start inventing red flags, or that process becomes over, productive, and but why can't I think of a spiritual side or a positive side? And the thing is, I think I was kind of bumping against the terminology, like the light side or whatever. And there's also this thing they call the spirit guide, where it's like a connection to something higher. And I was like, what? I'm not down with that. But what kind of connected me eventually was like, okay, what's chi, right? In Tai Chi, right? What's chi? It's just another word for spirit, right? Or like air, or like energy. Or in the Tao Te Ching, they even quoted it in they have a lot of cool quotes, and like they give you like a nice there's like papers they give you, and so, and I was like, Tao Te Ching, right? They talk about the way, right?
Yeah.
Or from one way there's, from one way there's 10 million, and from 10 million there's one way, And I was like, okay,
Yes.
right. So what I'm really bumping against is maybe just the wording and like Christian, like it's similarity to Christianity or Catholicism. Whereas like actually I've had this concept already for a long time since practicing karate. you know?
Right.
I mean, so okay, the spirit, okay, intellectual side I get it, maybe left brain stuff, right? Emotional side, maybe that's more the whatever, the emotional aspect of the brain, or whatever, that I can kind of get. I still, you know and then the body, of course, is the physical cells of your body, and you need to exercise, take care of it. But the spiritual self, that's kind of like, yeah, the intuition, your your chi, this side that where creativity comes from. So it's so easy for me to think of the dark side, and I'm so drawn to it, and I want to draw creativity from my dark side. And what was really kind of opening for me was my teacher says, well, guess what? That's not where your creativity comes from. Your creativity comes from, your light side, your spiritual side. I was like, huh. Now you can take the experiences of darkness that you've experienced, and the tragedies and things that hurt you, and interpret them, but the actual thing that's interpreting and creating art, or podcasts, or beautiful things, is your spiritual side, or the E, or the Tao, or whatever you want to call it. And I was like, oh, I mean that was something I had to process, right? And that I came to myself, and my teacher helped me along in saying like, well, yeah, it's like it's not creativity comes from your spiritual side, was what she told me. And I was like, oh crap. And there's this whole exercise where we kind of like get rid of our dark side, And it's so funny because we have to. So okay, spoiler alert, in case anyone's gonna do it. So you those remember those letters I told you, the negative letters that you're, and
Right.
stuff like that, and all the there's another like you write out all the shit that you hate about yourself, and you have to let it go. And I said you have to go burn it, and I wanted to keep some of it. They want, okay, so here, let me say in more vague terms in case I want to edit out the burn part. So for the dark side and for the letters and stuff, we have to get rid of it, right? And I told my teachers, hey, I kind of don't want to get rid of it. I kind of want to keep like a scrap or something, right? And they're like, no, that's your dark side telling you that. Just get rid of it, And it's interesting because I was not the only one. There's other classmates who are like, wait, what about your dark side telling you don't have enough, so you have to get, it keeps you driven, it keeps you more ambitious to succeed and stuff. And they're like, well, are you trying to succeed out of what, out of fear? Is that, like, is it, if it's coming from the dark side, I don't know if it's so, if that's so helpful to you, right? And anyways, eventually I just got rid of it, and I don't have any copies of that stuff. I kind of wanted to, like, the guy who wrote this GQ, I'll leave in the link below, but he went to the Hoffman Process, and he kept a copy of the dark, like the angry letters he wrote his parents. But I just let them get, we just got rid of it. We destroyed them, right? And it was kind of freeing, actually. I kind of want to rewrite them just to see, just to get it out on paper again. But at the same time, I'm kind of fine with them gone from existence.
Right.
Okay. Sorry, where are we on time? Okay, I've been talking. Sorry. Okay, so let me finish it up with the new behavior. So, compassion, forgiveness, we get rid of our dark side, and we talk about this, and then throughout this whole thing, we talk about the spiritual side. And I kind of had that kind of breakthrough towards the end of, oh, maybe there is something to it. And now I think because of the process, I'm trusting myself more. And that's where we go into new behavior. And the new behavior, they incorporate the things that are taught in the different exercises. Like one of them is something I'm practicing every day is, 3 things you appreciate, and 3 things you appreciate about yourself, and 3 things that you're grateful for in your life, right? And then try to write that down each night before you go to sleep. And it's kind of like a cool way to rewire your brain. Instead of thinking of all the regrets of the day or all the things that you have to be doing, you just think of, wait, hold on. What do you actually appreciate about yourself right now in this moment? Okay, and what do I really appreciate about? Oh, there's another thing. We have to speak in. I have to speak in the first person.
Yeah.
Because, and it's interesting because once I start speaking in the first person, it kind of changes the feeling of what I'm saying, right? So I write down the 3 things I appreciate, and I write down the 3 things I'm grateful for, and I have to think in the moment, I'm not so, my life is not so terrible, right?
Yeah.
And then so quick example would be like my friend that passed away in the loved ones episode. I mentioned my friend who passed from cancer, and I was beating myself up about not watching that movie he recommended earlier and seeing some of the signs of like maybe I should have done something more creative with him. But I thought about it. It wasn't until after the process I thought about like, wait, when I was thinking about things I appreciate and things I'm grateful for, we do this exercise, and this is the keystone exercise of the new behavior. It's called recycling, right? So I did this exercise called recycling, and I realized, I actually made a movie with him like 3 years ago, like when he was still sick. Like it's like a 2-minute movie, and I totally forgot about that. But it was something I did appreciate. I'm grateful for. And because I was so focused on the things that I regretted and did not do with my friend that passed, I forgot about all the good things that I'm grateful for. That the times I had with him. Yeah. Before I get into recycling, any questions or yeah?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So new behavior. This is something that y'all can take home. So recycling is basically you think of a. So I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version. So you think of an event in your life where a pattern was triggered. Okay. For example, my friend, thinking about my friend that passed, I'm in my bedroom and I'm thinking about him, and how do I feel? I feel physically. How do I feel? I feel like I'm kind of slouching. And take it up, 10%. So I'm slouching even more, and I'm just really living in that regret. So the pattern is regret, right? And I'm really slipping into that pattern of regret. Where do I feel it localized? I feel it localized maybe, for me personally, in my left temple. Okay, so from my left temple, I reach in and I grab that regret. Okay, so I visualize reaching in and grabbing and pulling out that regret. Okay, what do I see in my hand? Okay, don't make it up, just let whatever comes to you. And I see green goo. Okay, I slap my hands together, I rub my hands together, and I let my spirit, my intuition, my positive side transform it. I rub it and I let the friction rub it and transform it. I look at my hands. Oh, okay. In my mind, I see pink, I don't know, looks like pink light or something, right? I take that and I put it back into my left temple. I let it fill me, right? And I let it fill me with like light or, whatever that my spirit has transformed it to. I let it fill me to my toes. And I really embody that new feeling, okay? And I kind of I'm kind of like, right now I'm sitting in my chair and I'm full that my posture's better. And I feel like kind of like doing Tai Chi, like the Chi has filled out my external limbs. And okay, now I go back to that scene of where I'm alone in my bedroom thinking about my friend that passed. And okay, I go through that scene again. Instead of regret, what do I feel? Appreciation, maybe. Yeah. I feel appreciation for those moments we did have, and that I was able to be there with him on his deathbed, right?
Right.
And okay, and then I'll write that down and I'll make notes. So that's recycling.
Okay.
So that's kind of like, what is that? That's like a weird ass. Basically, it bypasses your intellect. Like intellectually, like why does that work? Sure, there's what you're doing is. What I'm doing is I'm building new neural pathways, right? I'm taking a specific experience where my neural pathway is so rigid in the negative pattern that my neurons go through that cycle much easier, right? It's kind of like the Browning effect, right? The Browning effect is basically if you have a certain chemical or molecule, it's going to go down the easiest path, right? So that's my easiest path is regret. Okay, now what I'm doing is I'm going back and thinking, I'm letting my spirit, my intuition, create other alternatives. And well, that's one thing I really liked about the process, is that there's no prescribed solution for every pattern you have. You actually have to come up with each solution. So for regret, I've come to gratefulness, right? And no, I kind of like it, and it's helped me coming back, transitioning back into the world. I'll find myself falling into certain patterns, and I'm like, wait, maybe there's another alternative of like how I can look at this, right? So intellectually, like you and I have talked about this a lot, right? But doing some weird ass kind of spiritual activity or something, for some reason, it kind of pushes it up a level. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm actually physically rubbing my hands and doing this shit, and like it's kind of like why I do, martial arts as well, because it kind of incorporates all four steps, right? I'm aware of certain feeling, like maybe I'm feeling angry, so then I express it by hitting a bag, and then I have compassion and forgiveness because I'm hitting that bag because it's getting out. Because it's coming out of love for myself, and it's something I want. And when I'm hitting the bag or whatever, I'm making realizations of, oh, that anger is not really about that person or whatever. It's more about how I'm reacting to that person. It's something I can control, because you can't control other people. I can't control other people, right? And then then the new behavior is. So after I hit a bag or something, then the new behavior, I can do recycling, or I can just be, now I'm in a better place and I can act, accordingly. So anyways, what I'm saying is that it doesn't have to be that specific activity, even though that specific activity has been kind of helpful. But it's a perspective I can use in incorporating into my martial arts as well, I think, yeah. Okay, sorry, I've been talking for a long time. Sorry, man.
No problem, man.
Is that interesting to you at all, or you're like, man, James is crazy now?
No, no. It's something that it's always a curiosity when people go to these types of retreats, and a lot of people are not as open about the whole process or what they've learned from it.
Yeah.
I don't think.
It's hard. It's actually kind of hard to find this kind of stuff online. I think the reason being is that I'm like, the teachers have to go through extensive training, like 2 years or so. So for me to say certain things, like maybe, what I just said is for the most part fairly accurate. But there's probably some nuances I'm missing. And I don't like I said in our disclaimer, in and young disclaimer, you take what you can, but we're not. I'm not a trained professional in this, right? But
Right.
But what I just said is if you get the basic principle, I think it's something useful, right? Yeah. so I think that's why this kind of people are hesitant to talk about it. Also because it's kind of like their trade secrets. All the things, like I said, all the things I said, other therapy practices, psychotherapy practices do it, but Hoffman's the only one that kind of crystallizes everything into like a 7-day, retreat. And they've been doing it for about 50 years, and I really like it. Like I definitely thought of you actually, like, oh, you know what, you might like it, but because what's interesting is that I really look up to you, right? Because you have kids and you're also doing this and you're also trying to balance work as well, right? But it's also, I think, important for self-care. And there were other classmates of mine who had kids or established careers or were much older than me, and I'm like, wow, okay, it's not only sexually frustrated single guys who are here. It's all people who from different walks of life, males, females, and yeah. So that was kind of good to see, I guess. Yeah, that guess what? Like a kid is not gonna solve, like a child is not gonna, because that's some kind of weird false construct I had, was like, oh, once I marry or have kids, I'm gonna be better.
Yeah, that's yeah. Don't think that at all.
Don't think that at all, huh? Okay.
No, uh, because once you have kids, it becomes a whole new dynamic. Get Getting married is a whole new dynamic too, because you start to learn. You kind of learn about yourself.
Yeah.
I think because the way you react to somebody new, and somebody's different perspective, depending on who you marry, obviously. Um, if they are able, how they deal with things and how you deal with things, and it's always a learning experience.
Right.
And things that you might think that are just normal are completely not normal based on your upbringing.
Hmm.
uh, I know that the way I think is shaped by my experiences, and whoever raised me, and I inherited a lot of their values of what's right and the proper way of doing things, and it's not universal at all. So
Yeah, like, I mean, what do our parents do? Like, all they can do is learn what they about parenting from their parents, right? And
yeah,
then parenting, maybe they can compare it to other families, but you're right. Like, every family dynamic is very different. It doesn't translate to other families, right? Each family has to figure out. Oh, like my family, our family, we have to figure out what works for us, and that's just, there's no guidebook for that.
no, I mean, you can read all the books you want on like parenting, but in the end, there's going to be dissenting opinions from both sides.
Yeah, yeah. And I do believe that it is important to do research, like maybe take top 3 books in whatever top. So Tim Ferriss says, take the top 3 books of whatever field and read them. Just then, and you basically, you've already, by reading the top 3 books in any field, you are in the top 85% now. Like, it's kind of, it's a good, it's a interesting idea, and it's like, oh, so with parenting, or whatever, these kind of therapy things, now I'm in like this, I'm part of this elite class, right, of people who've gone through this process, right?
Yeah.
And okay, one thing I really liked towards the end was that, oh, don't they tell you, don't believe that you had to do this to be well. Don't believe that now you're cured. Don't believe that don't believe that now you can just go ahead and cure other people as well. That's dangerous thinking, right? Because what I'm responsible for is my own life. And what I'm
Right.
responsible for is my own happiness. Hoffman Process can help me. I can help other people, sure, but it has to be if I help myself first.
Right.
Right. And basically the Hoffman Process is about basically it's kind of like using experiential. So basically, you know, people physically or emotionally or going through certain exercises to find self-compassion or self-love, like the work of Brene Brown, right? She's a TED speaker, and kind of like finding that vulnerability and also love for yourself, because it's kind of like the oxygen mask, right? If you
Yeah.
don't put the oxygen, give your love first, your oxygen mask to yourself first, you can't help other people because you'll be dying. You know, you can't give love to other people, and that's something they tell us to make vows or visions for our lives, and that was a common one that came up, and that was one for me as well. Is that I want to love myself more, and I think I'm better at it now. Yeah. But guess what? Like, I still have a lot of work to do, and the Hoffman Process did not cure me. I.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, think of all the people who do not need to be cured.
Sure.
How many people can you think of? It's probably like Dalai Lama, and
Richard
maybe
Branson, maybe, I don't know. He seems
maybe
pretty.
Richard Branson. He seems very comfortable, and a lot of people who have found success and who are very comfortable in their skin probably don't need to be cured.
Yeah. And the idea is that you're actually already beautiful. You're actually already awesome. It's just that through programming, through the different, through the through the negative love patterns that you learn from your parents, grandparents, whatever, and then how the society or the world reinforces or those kinds of ideas. That's what then it starts muddling that really beautiful part that's in all of us, right? Now that's a belief, that might be a construct, right? That you're actually, that there is a spirit or there is a chi, but so what?
Yeah.
So what? It's a good, useful construct. And there's studies in quantum mechanics where thought affects the outcome, right? So if thought can affect the physical world, the thought is a physical thing because it's neurons going through your brain. Now, if you can have a thought about this positive side of you, it might actually manifest itself in whatever, your actions, your behavior, and that could manifest into physical, observable things in the real world. So why not? Yeah. I asked my teacher, like, is it all our parents' fault? And she says, they, as a kid, when you're like vulnerable, they're the ones.
It is.
I guess it's. You think so? You believe that?
Well, I mean, they are basically shaping your view of how things are.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch that old Brandon Lee movie, The Crow?
Dude, I love The Crow. Yeah.
Do you remember that scene where he talks to the mother who's like a drug addict, and she's like, he said like, "Mother is the word of God," to all the blah blah blah, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a great line. Do you remember that line?
It's been
Do you know
like
what I'm
about.
talking about?
It's been like 15 years since I've seen that movie, but
It's been like, yeah, it's been a long time for me too. But there's that scene.
Okay.
Where he says, "Mother is the name for God." I'm looking it up right now. In the lips and hearts of little children. Yeah, mother is the name for God in the lips and hearts of little children.
Oh, I do kind of remember that. I remember that. I was like, what? he's saying something really cool. I don't get it. Because I watched it when I was like a teenager, but yeah.
Oh, Jen just got back.
Oh, okay. You have to head
That's
out?
my dog running away.
Oh, okay.
Pretty soon.
Pretty soon,
But,
yeah.
you know, but the thing is, like, that resonates, right?
Yeah.
And that's very applicable to this conversation we're having.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it was my grandparents and then my parents. Because when you're a kid, and then it's like you think it's all your fault, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, daddy's not home? That's my fault. Oh, you know, grandpa is not as close to me now? Oh, it's my fault, you know? And
But the thing is, like, when you grow up with, like, a very Chinese background, they kind of reinforce those negative parts.
yeah. And where they learn that from? They learn from their parents and
In any case, let's talk about Hamilton. Let's talk about positive.
Okay, let's talk about. Anyways, okay. Last thought on Hoffman. Yeah, good stuff. I recommend it. If you have the money, if you're like super, if you have enough disposable income and you really feel like you need change, yeah, it gets my approval. Now, I think there are probably more cost-effective ways, possibly for people who don't. But I do think it's probably one of the most unique things I've ever experienced in my life, and I think, my sponsor. I'll briefly. Okay, Hamilton. Saw that last night. I was just coming back from the Bay Area, and it was good. The thing was this. I saw it at Pantages Theater, right? And I've been listening to that Spotify freaking playlist of Hamilton. Like a couple months ago, I was listening to it like nonstop. Anyways, what was good about Hamilton, like seeing it in person. So I bought it months ago. So I only paid like $130 or something like that, and the guy next to me paid like $300+, because he bought them much later. So, I'm grateful for that, and dude, like the group in LA is pretty dope. Is it the same group that you saw in SF, or I don't know?
Probably. I figure it's like one traveling group.
Okay. Like, I don't know. Can we talk about like what they wear? I guess. Well, like the guy with the afro, was he in? He had like really crazy hair. Was he in yours?
I don't think so.
Like,
but the time we went, I think there was like a couple of substitutions.
Oh, and because like there was a substitution for mine as well, or like there was a standby that became Hamilton for mine.
Oh.
But he was good. I didn't know until I saw the actual pamphlet, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, it was now critiques. So okay, good was that I can actually see the play and kind of visually conceptualize how the story flows, right? And there's some parts in the spot. There's only a few sections, not too many, where the Spotify does not cover it. It's just like some dialogue,
right?
Like Lauren's, the section about Lauren's, right? Wait, do you ever hear this phrase? Is Lauren's, was it like Lauren's life? It's like, oh, is Lauren's alive yet? It's like a catchphrase. I didn't get it. I guess it's a meme or something. But, anyways, the thing is, like, it was just basically a kind of like a copy of the Broadway one, I think.
Well, that's the idea.
That's the idea, right? But I just found myself saying, "Oh, this sounds just like the Spotify list," but like better, and it's live, which is great. And there's some acting, I see them, but it's kind of just like a cop. The guy who plays like Hamilton sounds just like Lin-Manuel Miranda, And what was cool is that the night I went, Lin-Manuel Miranda came out at the end.
Yeah, I saw your Instagram
Yeah,
feeds.
yeah. I think that's legal. I can post that. If not, they can write me a cease and desist, just like the Hoffman people who are gonna do that. Um, and so I just found myself being like waiting for something different. Does that make sense? Like I was looking for some sort of interpretation or something that I enjoyed it. I'm grateful that they made a very successful reproduction of the what I was expecting.
Right.
But I was just hoping maybe they would do something unexpected, just a little bit. But for the most part, it was what I expected. Really good show, no, nothing surprising. But that I would say that's also my critique as well. Yeah. Like maybe like a different way to say the line, or maybe a different way. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I talked to my wife about that, but they were trying to make it so that people who can't make it to the Broadway show get nearly the same sort of experience.
But the thing of like the lead actor basically sounding like Lin Manuel Miranda, maybe that's his voice. I don't know, because he was
Well,
like, I think
like
he.
the
Yeah.
king, the king. I mean, he sounds exactly like the Broadway musical recorded cast list, right?
Yeah, and except like he hits one line that's a little bit different. Instead of like he hits the I know for my night, instead of saying where did it, like
Yeah.
he hit one line a little bit differently, which was I was like, oh cool, something different. But I also felt myself like, oh, he didn't hit it as hard, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. But that, yeah, you're right. That was like, for me, that was like, oh yeah, this basically sounds exactly like the cast recording. And did you like that, or did Jen like that, or like?
I think she's more accepting of that idea. Is like when they cast for the replacements, they're trying to find someone who kind of do the same things, to bring about the same sort of emotions,
Right. Yeah.
because they're trying to capture liquid or gold in a bottle a second time, and just like trying to duplicate it and replicate it, which is probably I don't know if you were familiar with the musical The Color Purple.
Oh, okay. I've seen the movie, but not the musical.
I've never seen the movie. I've never seen the musical, but I was watching the Tonys last year, and the lead, Cynthia Erivo, her voice is like crazy amazing,
Yeah.
and when she decided to leave the show, that the producer's like, okay, let's wrap it up. We can't replace that girl. So,
Wow.
yeah, so if after this, go on YouTube and look for Cynthia Erivo Tonys, and then like every time I watch it, it's like I'm really blown away, and I'm not even there. It's not even live, but when you watch it live, I'm sure it's like a way different experience. And in order for them to replace her, they would have to find someone who could replicate that feeling of that voice is just so out there.
Hmm. Cool. All right. I guess we can wrap it up. Well, a few notes. Sorry, I have a few notes on the. Okay, just a disclaimer about the Hoffman process that I just mentioned. I left out a lot. Obviously, I left out many different things. So please don't take this as a guide for like how the Hoffman process really is. There's a lot of things and steps that I took out just because of time constraints and memory. So just want to throw that out there. One bit of homework that they gave us, you know, was this to hug your parent and say, if they're still alive, and say I love you, right?
Right.
And so I saw my dad a couple of days after the process, and the night before I left back for LA, we had a pretty good talk, and he mentioned, yeah, he recognizes that he was a little hard on us, my siblings and I, and there's some guilt there. And I would thought that, wow, that's pretty. He has mentioned some of that a little bit before, but like towards me, like guilt towards raising me. I kind of appreciated, his vulnerability, right? And the next day, as I was leaving to go to the airport, kind of rushed, and I hugged him and I said, "I love you," right? He's like, "Oh, okay." And then I'm stepping away, and I was like, I had this feeling like, okay, shit, maybe I'll say one more thing. And I said, "Dad, you're a good dad. You know, don't worry too much about it."
Yeah.
And he kind of like looked at me like for a split second, and he's like, "You better hurry to the airport." He's like, "Yeah, yeah, better hurry to the airport," you know, and
Right.
yeah, and that was it, and that was great. That's exactly what I kind of, I mean, whatever it is, that's the way it was supposed to be, and that's the way it would happen. So yeah. Okay. Shoot. Yeah, I should. And speaking of which, I should probably pack for my trip tomorrow. Any last words or any thoughts on your end? Or yeah.
No, we can. I'm sure when you get back or the next podcast, we'll have other things to discuss.
Sure, I can do a whole like Asia thing. But I guess my quickly language corner thing to do is 知生难保. So that's Chinese. 知生难保就是说，知生 is your own body. 难保 means is hard to take care of. So basically, it's a phrase that you might say when I see these poor dogs on these dogs. I can't really bring them into my house and take care of them because I can barely take care of myself. Basically, it means I can barely take care of myself, right? So maybe I'll call animal control to help them take care of it. But like 自生难保, you would use like I myself, I don't have the mental energy or financial energy to take care of this situation because I can barely handle it myself. So yeah, that's my word. Anything on your end or?
I know that it's like a borrowed word.
Yeah.
From English. It's I don't know why I'm thinking about this right now.
Yeah.
It's so bland.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, what is it? I don't even know what it is. I love it. Yeah.
It's something really perverted in Japan, and it's my TA for Japanese class in undergrad told the whole class about it. I don't know why. It was like, well, there was only they were all guys in this class.
Oh, okay.
And he was telling us about soapland. So if you're in Japan, maybe you should go seek one out. But
Soapland.
you can look it up. Yeah, you can look it up.
I kind of know what it is, but okay. Thank you, Dan. Soapland. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you.
Enjoy
Take care.
Trip. Have a safe trip.
Thanks, man. All right. See ya. Bye.
Bye.
Relationships getting you down.